okay. Huh? No.
Hello lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, welcome back to another video. There are very few developers that have even come close to the level of love from its player base like Valve. Absolutely dominating the gaming scene in the mid-2000s and early 2010s, you would be hard-pressed to find someone that hasn't at least played one Valve title, with arguably one of their most beloved being Left 4 Dead, with zombie killing romp that is one of the most defining multiplayer games of its era. However, as everyone knows, Valve struggled to count to 3, so we haven't seen much in the way of a Left 4 Dead 3 at all in the last 15 odd years, with the series relying on the modding scene to keep it alive. However, demand still continued to grow, leading to Turtle Rock Studios, who were a part of the original Left 4 Dead's development along with Valve, to create a spiritual successor called Back 4 Blood. Although generally liked by critics, it's a game that seemed to struggle to catch on with gamers. So, as we do with the show, let's check out the good, the just okay, and the outright bad. As always, we're going to start out with our good points. First and foremost, this game looks and sounds incredible, taking place in a variety of locations and at different times of day. Back 4 Blood does an incredible job of creating a tense and immersive atmosphere as you see the absolute devastation caused by the Ridden, which are this game's zombies. And speaking of, I really enjoyed the amount of variety of both designs and enemy types. Having a pretty decent roster, Back 4 Blood will see you constantly kept on your toes when you have to deal with the hordes. From stingers, reekers, tallboys, sentinels, hags, ogres, and a good half dozen more, the battles never really get all too stale, but they're not without their flaws, but I'll get onto that later. What really helps elevate the game's combat is its weapon variety, customizability, and the card system, though the card system is a little controversial for some. Starting out with the guns themselves, there is a really good variety of secondary weapons, SMGs, assault rifles, shotguns, light machine guns, and sniper rifles, with there being several different iterations of each, all with their own stats, helping them differentiate themselves from one another. Though I wouldn't say it does an outright perfect job of making one assault rifle feel super different from another, it does enough that you can notice the differences if you pay attention. And I will say that's the case for most of the weapons and their respective types. However, what really helps start to separate these weapons from one another are their weapon attachments, because depending on what weapons you're running, they'll have different potential attachments that you can find, or that you can buy at the in-level store. From silencers to sights, you'll be able to mix and match what you want to have your perfect weapon. There is one major problem with the weapons I have, but I'll get onto that later in the video as well. The card system for me is a plus, but I can certainly see where some people would be turned off by it. Firstly, these cards allow for you to have active and passive bonuses upon starting a run. You'll have the option to select a deck that you have built, which, depending on the difficulty you are playing, can either make or break a run. It does make it become a bit of a grind if you're someone who wants to play on the hardest difficulty, as you'll need to make sure you have the best cards possible via playing on the lower difficulties in order to unlock some of them. But if you're like me and just want to kill as many zombies as possible, you don't really need to overthink this system. Now, as I said, I can understand why people don't like it, but going in with a casual approach makes it a lot more enjoyable, and it ends up giving the game a little bit more replayability than you might expect. But where the card system really shines is the corruption cards. These basically act as modifiers, keeping the gameplay a bit more fresh as you make your way through the 3 main acts. Technically there are 4 in the main game, not including the 2 extra DLCs that I don't happen to own, but more on that later. But the 4th is basically one giant boss fight, and although really cool, it's not really something you're going to want to replay over and over again as much as the main campaigns. The final good point for me is the amount of general customization the game has through unlocks via playing the game. From different weapon skins and outfits, it's a nice reward for actually interacting with the game's systems. Now, they do take a little bit longer than you might like in order to unlock them, but hey, I prefer them to be unlockable through gameplay rather than microtransactions. It's nice to be able to do that. Getting into the just okay parts of the game, I'll say the general gunplay itself sort of falls here overall. It's not awful, but it doesn't really stand out either. It does its job, and it does it very serviceably. Although these guns allow for you to take out an absolutely insane amount of Ridden, they kind of feel like they're lacking a little bit of punch overall, just missing that little bit more impact that you would hope for. The next just okay point for me is the level designs. Although visually impressive, they're somewhat lacking when it comes to their memorable locations. I played the game initially at launch, and even upon replaying it now, I can barely remember any of the locations, other than the gas station since we're there multiple times. It could be due to the somewhat generic location choice, but it just doesn't seem to hit the same as what we got in the Left 4 Dead games. The game seemed to just play a little bit too safe when it came to its location choices. I wish it had pushed some boundaries a little bit more. The game's story is also just okay for me. It's functional in there, but not particularly groundbreaking or all that intriguing. This also goes for the game's range of characters. Although I appreciate the amount of variety on offer, the game suffers from the fact that outside of their passives, they just aren't really that memorable. They try to give them moments through cutscenes and dialogue throughout the game, but it's pretty forgettable. It didn't ruin my experience at all. It did fall flat though, as it felt like every character had to fit specific archetypes, from the soldier, the old hard ass, the conspiracy theorist, and so on. Again, it felt like it played it too safe here instead of running with fresh ideas. It's a genre that gets stuck with the same stereotypes time and time again, and by that I mean zombies. Every time there is a zombie game or movie, you get these specific archetypes. I just want something a little more fresh. Moving into the bad, this is where a few of the bigger problems start to become way more obvious. To go back to what I said earlier in this video, even if we get to make our perfect weapon, it doesn't get to carry over from act to act. I get this is for balance reasons, but it really hurts the overall feeling of progression. Same goes for the upgrades you purchase in a given run. Even though they stick around if you leave the act halfway through and come back, they don't carry over from say Act 1 to Act 2, meaning any purchased upgrades you get become pointless, putting you back to square one every single time. I would have liked more of an RPG-like system here. Maybe have a lower level limit on the top end weapons, attachments, and upgrades early on, say in Act 1 or 2, but have them eventually become a lot more substantial in the late game, say Act 3 or 4. The weapon rarity system is nice, but it doesn't really feel like it's utilized all that well. I definitely feel like they could have done more with the weapons overall. Arguably, the biggest fault to me is the fact that the game goes for a more is more approach. Very rarely, and I mean very rarely, do you get a chance to breathe. You're constantly being attacked by the Ridden, and mutated Ridden show up a little bit too much for my liking. It's not to say it doesn't happen in Left 4 Dead as well, but I think, considering it's meant to be a horror game, there isn't really anything that slows the pacing down. At least in Left 4 Dead you had the witch, which made you stop what you were doing and maybe take a bit of a breath before you went in guns blazing. I know I praised the variety of different Ridden, and I still appreciate the amount on offer. I just didn't need them to show up every 2 seconds. There's sadly one more big problem that Back 4 Blood has, and it's not even the gameplay itself. It's actually the game's pricing. Don't get me wrong, when the game's on sale, it's 100% worth the $4 or $5 you can pick it up for. But the base price now is still 90 Australian dollars after all this time. The deluxe is 135, while ultimate is 150. It's just way too much. Each of the DLCs costs over 20 bucks each, or 60 for the annual pass. Now, you only need the annual pass instead of the 3 different DLCs, but it feels like a bit of a rip-off for what it is. Sure, you'll get some new characters and a couple of new acts, but it doesn't really feel like it's worth $60, especially considering you can get Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, plus all the mods are free, for less than 25 bucks. As I said, on sale, sure. I can definitely justify picking this game up, and at the time of recording I've actually picked up the DLC, the annual pass, because it was $6. However, it needs to be on a deep discount like it was when I picked it up to be worthwhile. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Back 4 Blood. Even if it didn't really reach its full potential, it does have a pretty damn good skeleton at its core, and I do think if the game was to be given another go, they could definitely tighten up a lot to do with the balancing and systems, creating something truly memorable. It's a game I will gladly play through multiple times in the future. I'm glad I own it. But it's definitely not a game that I can say outright replaces Left 4 Dead. If you haven't got it, I'd definitely pick it up on sale, but I wouldn't pay full price. So with that, lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, it brings us to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Back 4 Blood. I honestly really enjoyed my time with Back 4 Blood, and I wish I could have played some multiplayer, but I don't have any friends who own it, and by the time that I was done with this recording, it went back on sale again, so sort of just didn't quite work out according to plan. But if you played this game and you really enjoy it, let me know in the comment section below. I think people judge it a little bit too harshly. I think it has a lot more replayability than people give it credit for, and I do think it's worth the time, but I would definitely pick it up on sale. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button. If you want to go that extra step, you can hit the subscribe button, and if you want to go that extra mile, you can support me on Ko-fi, Patreon, or YouTube memberships like these lovely people here. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Join the Discord. Stay safe out there. Bye.